I'm Jonas Bingo, and welcome to the Cycling Dane.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another video here on the channel. Today, Ewan and I will be ranking nearly 40 riders of this year's peloton, and of course, I'm joined by Mr. Kroger himself, Ewan, and we are definitely going to be having a bit of a run through memory lane of the season that has gone past. And yeah, Ewan, what are you expecting from this? And what are the rules as well?
Well, just looking at all these riders, we are going to have a fun time discussing them. So the rules are judging these riders' performances over the 2021 season on this scale of 5. Starting with Superstar, that's riders that had an absolutely stellar season, from better than expected down to satisfied, below average, then to meh. This is usually based off of their previous year's action and the expectations we had coming into 2021. So this ranking is purely subjective, and please do tell us down below what you guys think about this list.
Yeah, so without further ado, we're best to start then with Miguel Angel Lopez. Of course, he had a bit of a bad end to the year in the Vuelta a España, picking up a stage win nonetheless, but not quite managing to take that podium finish. And yeah, Ewan, you've been very critical of him in the season. You've said that he hasn't, well, rightly so, he hasn't had any World Tour success other than the Vuelta a España stage. So yeah, where would you put Miguel Angel Lopez?
I would say this is below average, in my humble opinion, because I expected more from Miguel Angel Lopez. Yes, he was very much on track to get a third at the Vuelta a España. He got a stage win there and was very animated. However, apart from that, throughout the season, it's been an incredibly subpar from him. And Superman has been in the headlines for almost only negative things over the course of 2021. And I hope that he can come back fighting in 2022.
So next we have one of the most hyped up neo-pros we've had in a long time. Of course, the Giro d'Italia under-23 winner last year, Tom Pidcock. And Ewan, he did win the Brantus Pile, and of course he also is the Olympic mountain bike champion, but that's nothing to do with the road season. Would you say better than expected or satisfied? Or
I would say this is almost better than expected because he's this young. He won Brabantse Pijl ahead of Wout van Aert. He came second by almost a millimeter to Wout van Aert at Amstel Gold. He was up there in Omloop het Nieuwsblad, which is a proper race nonetheless, as well as being up there in Strade Bianche, right in the mix when things were happening in that very, very elite group. Purely based on the road, I would say his results have really exceeded expectations, especially given that Ineos didn't really field him for any 1 week long stage races throughout the year.
Well, next we have Wout van Aert. Not really any discussion here. He's basically been a superstar on anything he goes, flat, time trial, mountain. So I'm just going to say superstar. And I think you agree with that, Ewan, as well.
No explanation. Let's head over to the next one.
Yeah, your favorite rider, Gianni Moscone. Of course, it looked like he was going to take the Paris-Roubaix monument and didn't quite happen. But yeah, Ewan, what have you thought of Gianni Moscone? Of course, he's moving sticks to Astana for the new season.
This has been a good year for Gianni Moscone, 4th place at Paris-Roubaix. He was also up there. He was also up there for much of the first week of the Giro d'Italia and won 2 stages of the Tour of the Alps. I would say this is satisfied. It's a very average season for Gianni Moscone. Usually gets a good result in a couple World Tour races, but a limited amount of World Tour wins. This is very characteristic for the Italian.
And next we have Jonas Bingo, who of course absolutely, well, stunned everyone in the Tour de France. I think he stunned most people, including himself, finishing second overall. Of course, he also had a good tour of the Basque Country and winning the Coppi Bartoli stage race and taking a stage win in the UAE Tour. And Ewan, where would you rate his season? Because it's absolutely been an incredible ride for the young Dane.
So the thing is, I'm not sure whether to put this in superstar or better than expected. Because yes, his Tour de France performance will characterize this year. But apart from that, yeah, we had the Basque Country, we had a stage win at the UAE Tour, as well as a very good Coppi Bartali. But there's not a sense of consistency throughout the whole year in terms of World Tour performances. But it's been an excellent year for him nonetheless. So I'm going to say better than expected, but I'm sure you will argue for superstar.
I mean, I think he's going to be superstar in the next year. So I'm fine. I'm content with that. So we'll see. But anyways, going from my country to your country, Adam Yates for Ineos Grenadiers changed, of course, for this season. Didn't quite manage to regain his UAE Tour title, but certainly did manage to win the Vuelta a Catalunya and was up there in the Vuelta a España. And Ewan, we were disappointed that he wasn't in the Tour de France, but do you think Adam Yates' move to Ineos Grenadiers was a success in this first season?
Yes, I think it was, and I'm surprised that it was. Still think to this day, Adam Yates is the closest to beating Pog or Rog in terms of a stage race this year at the UAE Tour. But Adam Yates has had a pretty solid season. Second at UAE Tour, a win at Catalunya, as well as a fourth place at the Basque Country, and that fourth place at La Vuelta a España. So it's definitely been a good year for Adam Yates. And I would say this is better than expected, purely because I was expecting the same trajectory as Mitchelton Scott here.
So anyways, going from one Ineos Grenadiers rider to another, and this is, of course, the new Olympic road race champion, Richard Carapaz. Didn't quite live up to the expectations in the Vuelta a España later in the year, but of course, we will all remember that third place finish behind a certain Slovenian and Jonas Bingo. So Ewan, of course, that Olympic road race is going to steal the headlines.
I think Richard Carapaz has had a solid season. Tour de France, third place, and Olympic gold medal, of course. That will probably be what he goes down for. Disappointing Vuelta a España, but a Tour de Suisse win. So solid all around the board. Is it satisfied or better than expected, though? Because we maybe could have hoped for more from Richard Carapaz. But Scott, I'm going to let you give this call.
I will actually, I'll be nice to say better than expected because of the Olympic road race. And yeah, solid, as you said, solid Tour de Suisse ride. But speaking of the Olympics, I'll let you talk about the next rider, one of the riders of the season. Third in the UCI rankings, of course, watch that video as well. And yeah, Mr. Slovenia almost.
I feel like I don't need to really justify this one. Superstar, Roglic,
Really? Okay.
done.
Next, we have our first pro-continental rider of the list so far, Tim Merlier. And Ewan, you've been a big fan of the Belgian rider. And what do you think of his season?
I think Tim Merlier is a proper top-tier sprinter. And he's done something that only a few big sprinters have done. I'm thinking about Caleb Ewan and Mark Cavendish and so forth, where they go to the Giro d'Italia and go to the Tour de France and win stages at both. That's not that common of a feat, especially for a sprinter. So Tim Merlier, I would say, has had a brilliant season. He's taken some solid wins in the Belgian and Dutch semi-classics, as well as a World Tour stage win at the Benelux Tour. So Tim Merlier, I'm verging on better than expected or superstar. And I'll say that Tim Merlier could have won more at the Tour de France potentially if they didn't sprint for Jasper Philipsen. However, Dan Martin, retired cyclist from Ireland. Scott, where would you put him?
I mean, I didn't expect him to win a stage in the Giro d'Italia and be up there. And it was a bit of a shame they took him to the Tour de France and didn't let him rest up for the Vuelta. So I would say satisfied. I don't think better than expected because he is such a good rider. But yeah, do you agree?
He wasn't there in the classics.
Yeah, true.
And the Giro was his shining light for this year. That's it, really. But Sonny Colbrelli, however, here's a man who made things last.
You've talked him up all season. Massive fan of the now European, Italian, and what other race did he win as well? Just to cap off the season?
Well, Paris-Roubaix.
I'm hedging for complete superstar here because he also won the Benelux Tour, of course, as well, outright. I don't really know what else he could win to make it better.
A Grand Tour stage.
Yeah,
that's the only thing missing. However, he came close at Tignes, which is crazy still. So Sonny Colbrelli, for me, is a superstar as well. I think we all are surprised by how good he's been this year.
Anyways, from one rider who's been absolutely amazing this season, going to another rider. Of course, he won also a race starting in Paris on paper. Paris Tour. Well, you're the French fan, super fan here. And Arnaud Démare, of course, he was absolutely brilliant at the Giro d'Italia last year, but not really been the same this year. And where would you put the French darling?
Well, Arnaud Démare troubles me in a way because he went to La Vuelta, he went to the Tour, didn't really light things up. He won Paris Tour, and he's been winning small French circuit races like Boucle de la Mayenne, and he's won stages at La Vuelta Comunidad Valenciana. But it's not as good as last year. And I think it's hard to surpass 2020 for Arnaud Démare. So I would say below average.
Next, we come to probably one of the biggest surprises of the year, and that was, of course, when Casper Escalante somehow beat Mathieu van der Poel in a sprint at the finale of Ronde van Vlaanderen. And Casper Escalante, of course, is no longer the Danish national champion on the road, but he, did win E3 and Ronde van Vlaanderen.
Well, this has been a very, very solid season for Casper Asgreen. He peaked very much for that early part of the season, but he still had a good year nonetheless. with Idri and Ronde van Vlaanderen wins, which are incredible to say the least, alongside a time trial win at the Algarve, a third place overall in what is quite a mountainous one-week stage race, the National Time Trial Championships, as well as coming close to beating Wout van Aert and Saint-Emilion at the Tour de France. So a man that wins a monument and is probably the king of the cobbles, I would say would be a superstar. Okay. So let's go for it. Yeah.
Speaking of Ronde van Vlaanderen champions, next we have Peter Sagan, of course, who's going to be moving to Total Energies in the new year. Yeah, Ewan, of course, he did take a stage win in the Giro d'Italia, didn't manage to win the green jersey again for the second year in a row, and took a stage win in the Vuelta a Catalunya. For a man of his profile, second highest paid cyclist this year, do you think you would be expecting more from him?
Yes. And I think this is a disappointment. However, I had this moment the other day. I was wondering who actually won the Maglia Ciclamino at the Giro d'Italia. Sagan, but I forgot about it. And I think that summarizes his Giro d'Italia. We all forgot about it. And I would say this is below average.
Well, next Friday, I'll let you introduce him because you've basically been hyping him up.
Well, this is Julian Alaphilippe, double world champion. In 2021, he won a stage at Tirreno Adriatico, which was somewhat expected. He won La Flèche, that we expected. And he won a Tour de France stage, which you almost expected as well. So the thing is, his palmarès is vast this year, but we expected a lot of it, which makes this decision quite difficult. But based on the pure prestige, winning a Tour de France stage, and getting the yellow jersey, as well as winning the World Championships, I would say this is a solid season for Julian. Is it his best? No, it's nowhere near being his best season. But Scott, you're going to have the call.
I think you've absolutely perfectly summed it up there. No monument wins either, not winning that Liège-Bastogne-Liège that he wanted. So, yeah, satisfied, probably. We'll continue on the French theme, so I'll hand over to you again. This is definitely a rider that you've been talking the most on, Guillaume Martin.
Well, 1.73 meters of absolute talent, Guillaume Martin. 2 top 10s this year, 8th at the Tour de France, 9th at La Vuelta a España, the first time he's ever finished in a top 10 at a Grand Tour, and it's happened twice. I always have a trouble with Guillaume Martin. I would love him to win more, but he's very consistent in terms of his GC racing. He got a top 10 at Paris-Nice, and I would say this is satisfied because we were hoping for the big step up for Guillaume Martin based on his performances over the past couple of years, and he's done that to some extent. So this is what we expected.
Anyways, now we come to Movistar's star asset at the moment, and that is, of course, Enric Mas. Last season, he finished 5th in both the Tour de France and the Vuelta a España. But Ewan, did he manage to replicate that level in 2021?
I can't tell. He performed better at the Vuelta a España and probably at the Tour de France. But I would say this is better than I expected because I don't think I would have predicted him to finish 2nd at La Vuelta. But it's not exactly like an incredible season. In terms of a Grand Tour record, it's quite good. But outside of the Grand Tours, Enric Mas has left me underwhelmed. But the Grand Tours is what pays the money. And I would say better than expected.
Well, next one is a bit of a difficult one. It's, well, one of the biggest names in cycling. Chris Froome, of course, signed for the first season with Israel Stardom Nation. Of course, he's had a lot of bad luck before as well in 2019 when he crashed in the Dauphiné. And of course, this year in the Tour de France, he also had a number of crashes, but fair play to him. He carried on. He didn't step down on the bike. So yeah, Ewan, the highest paced cyclist of 2021, where would you put him in terms of our list?
I say nothing. I simply say nothing.
Okay, moving on. Anyway,
that's the right decision.
Anyways, moving on to Caleb Ewan, the Aussie super sprinter, of course, multiple stage winner of various Grand Tours. And Ewan, he didn't have his normal Tour Down Under win streak that he normally has every season because there wasn't a Tour Down Under. But where would you put the very punchy sprinter from Australia?
I mean, he was the best sprinter at the Giro d'Italia, but it's hard to say what could have been at the Tour de France. He won a stage at the UAE Tour. He won stages at the Belgium Tour, as well as the Benelux Tour, but a second place at Milan-San Remo, it's difficult to say. Caleb Ewan had a phenomenal 2020 and a very good 2019. This isn't quite as consistent, but I think that crash at the Tour de France maybe hampered him from being right up there and having a more illustrious palmarès in 2021. So I would say satisfied.
Well, next we come to one of the Grand Tour winners of the season, Ergon Bernal, who was absolutely phenomenal in Strade Bianche early on and also went on to win the Giro d'Italia. And Ewan, where would you put Ergon Bernal? He didn't quite live up to expectations in the Vuelta a España, but definitely has had a solid year, to say the least.
Well, anybody who wins a Grand Tour, I would say, should be destined for superstar. And Ergon Bernal is certainly that. He had a troubling year with Tirreno Adriatico not going to plan and the Vuelta a España being this whole Greek tragedy almost. But he still won the Giro very, very convincingly and was up there in Strade Bianche against the odds. So superstar, I think, is deserved. But the next man also is automatically into superstar with a Tour de France victory, 2 monuments, and an Olympic medal. No other rider has done this before in history. It is, of course, Tadej Pogačar.
So anyways, Ewan, Greg van Avermaet, we've been quite critical of him. He moved to AG2R Citroën. Of course, he finished on the podium in the Ronde van Vlaanderen. But do you think this was not what they were expecting when they signed the Belgian superstar?
I think this is below average. A 3rd place at the Ronde is actually decent, but it's not what I would have wanted from Tadej.
So anyways, from one superstar to another, Mark Cavendish winning 4 stages at the Tour de France, taking the points classification and almost breaking Eddie Merckx's record. Ewan, yeah, I don't know, superstar or where would you put it? Not superstar.
He didn't win a World Tour stage apart from Tour de France stages. That makes me skeptical.
Oh. Okay,
he's better than expected, but he's not a superstar in 2020.
Guys, remember that was Ewan, not me, who said that when you type your comments.
Fight me.
So anyways, from one Brit who is at, we presume, the end of his career almost, to a young gun from Ineos Grenadiers, Ethan Hayter, the winner of the Tour of Norway and almost the winner of the Tour of Britain. And Ewan, where would you put this young Brit in terms of, well, yeah, our list?
It's been a good year, for sure. Better than expected.
I think that's good. Okay, Max, moving on, keeping it going. From one of the teams that have victorious in their name, Damian Carruzzo. Of course, you seem to be a fanboy for him the entire Giro d'Italia, and you actually called it.
What can I say? I think Damian Carruzzo has had a very, very good season. Stage wins at the Giro d'Italia and La Vuelta. I don't think anybody else did that this year. So I would say this is better than expected.
So next we move on to a rider who's in the 2nd season of the World Tour for him, and that is Joao Almeida. Of course, he looked like he was going to do wonders in the Giro d'Italia. Couldn't quite do that after some bad luck and some inter-team, well, what do you even call it? Miscommunication or hedging the wrong bet.
Yeah, Joao finally won some road races in the second half of the season, winning the Tour of Luxembourg, the Tour of Poland, as well as finishing up there in the Giro dell'Emilia and also Milano-Torino, as well as his phenomenal Giro and his consistent early half of the year. You'd be hard-pushed to find someone outside of that top bracket almost who finished so consistently within top 10 at major races. And I think Joao is better than expected. I feel like I'm sounding like a broken record here, but Joao, I don't think goes into superstar. I think he deserves better than expected purely because he didn't win a Giro stage. He wasn't on the Giro podium when he probably could have been. Blame Remco.
Next, a man that needs no introduction, Mathieu van der Poel. And Ewan, do you think his Strade Bianche result, his Tour de France stage win, and performance in the one stage he was able to do in the UAE Tour, along with Tirreno Adriatico, where he did that phenomenal 52-kilometer attack, do you think these performances has yielded him a superstar in our ranking?
Well, Mathieu van der Poel joins an elite club of only 2 riders who finished on 2 monument podiums this year. And I think Mathieu van der Poel lit this up. The most iconic pictures of 2021 mostly feature Mathieu van der Poel. That Strade Bianche win, I think, is almost on a par with many monument victories. That Tour de France victory was incredible, as well as the way he honored the jersey and really rode for it. He had some bad luck in the second half of the season following that mountain bike crash, but Van der Poel, for me, is one of the most enticing narratives of professional cycling at the moment. And in 2021, I think most headlines were being carved by Mathieu van der Poel, and rightly so.
So next we come to Bora Hansgrohe with Wilco Kelderman and Ewan. The Dutchman, of course, has had a phenomenal first season, finishing 5th in the Tour de France. But do you think that is a result that was better than expected, or is that what you were expecting when he had finished on the podium the year before in the Giro d'Italia?
Well, if you were looking for consistency, Wilco's got it. If you're looking for consistency in attacking flair and panache, Wilco doesn't have that. He rode to a solid 5th place at the Tour de France, his best results ever at the Tour. 4th place at Dauphiné, 10th at Romandie, 5th at Catalonia. That's a very good record in terms of World Tour stage races. I think after his Giro d'Italia performance, we maybe expected more, but I would say this is better than expected.
Really? I would say satisfied.
It's solid, and I think Bora Hansgrohe has worked for him. I just hope he maybe creates a more exciting riding style over the next 12 months.
Yeah, I'm going to put him as satisfied because podium, Giro. No.
Okay.
I'll let you talk about the next rider because he's French again, changing from AG2R Citroën to DSM.
This is Auroman Baldi, who got a top 10 at the Giro, his first stage win ever outside France. And I would say Bardet's had an okay season. A Grand Tour stage win at La Vuelta. Yes, that's good, but I think we all just had very high expectations when we saw a moving team. But I would argue this could be satisfied because he's actually had a pretty consistent season for his standards.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's unsatisfied. So next we come to the Slovenian road race champion, of course, tasted a lot of success this year and also told us all to be quiet, Matej Mohoric. And Ewan, do you think his performance at the Tour de France and subsequently also the Benelux Tour later on?
Yep, better than expected.
And so now we come to the 2019 World Champion Mads Pedersen. And Ewan, the Dane, has definitely not had the same season that he would have wanted compared to his 2020 form or 2019 form.
Yeah, Mads Pedersen has not quite lived up to the expectations that we would have wanted. He did win Kuurne Brussels Kuurne, but it's not World Tour. He wasn't really there in the World Tour races. It's a shame. And Luke Rowe wiped him out of a good Paris-Roubaix result. So I'd say below average.
So next we come to Israel Startup Nation's probably best rider at this moment in time, Michael Woods. And Ewan, do you think Michael Woods has earned a higher ranking than some of his teammates?
Michael Woods has been a bit boring this year, hasn't he? In terms of the way he rides, in terms of his tactics, they're almost as in fact, they're almost more futile than they were before. And he may have had a documentary series commissioned about his Spring Classics results. You can watch it on GCN Plus. But those results don't say all that much. I have been disappointed by Michael Woods this year. I was hoping that a change of team would help him grow, but I think he should have stayed at EF. But Scott, I'm torn between below average and satisfied.
It feels cruel to put him in below average.
Go for it.
Okay, so satisfied.
Let's anger our Canadian friends.
Oh, you want to put him in below average?
Yeah. He drinks milk from a bag. It's what he deserves.
Okay, from one rider who hasn't had a good season to another rider who probably hasn't had the best season, of course, Pascal Ackerman, who will be changing from Bora Hansgrohe over to UAE Team Emirates. And Ewan, you've been a fan of him for a long time, but definitely you weren't excited by him this year.
This has been quite the disappointment, hasn't it? From a man who was winning Grand Tour stages in Merlier Ciclaminos to a man who now finishes, 5th in Eschborn Frankfurt. What an underwhelming season, I would say. I hate to say it, but I think this could be meh. Is it worse than Mads Pedersen, though? That's the one thing.
Well, we can change things.
Let's go for it.
Sorry, Mass. Anyways, we've never done that before. Done it now. So anyways, none of you are safe. Just because we put you in a category doesn't mean we won't move you. But anyways, now we come to one rider that we're both big fans of, Miguel Lander, the Basque superstar. And we were tipping him to both Giro d'Italia success and then consequently to Vuelta España success, but neither of those happened, Ewan. So, yeah, how do you feel about his season?
I feel very sad. This is below average.
He won the Vuelta a Burgos. Do you think maybe it's a meh, or is that too cruel?
He's won it before. So
you want to put him below average or in meh?
I would put him below average.
Okay, fair enough. Anyways, now we come to a rider that you're definitely not a fan of. It seems to be anything British, but yeah, Geraint Thomas, of course, the winner of the Tour de Romandie, and of course was hoping to do something at the Tour de France. That didn't quite happen. And Ewan, where do you think the 2018 Tour de France champion deserves to be in our 2021 ranking?
Satisfied. Full stop.
Fair enough. That was better than I was expecting. So now we come to, the young rider who's been heralded as the next Eddie Merckx. Of course, he had that incredible crash in Il Lombardia last year, and what a nice feat to see him actually completed this year. But he's had an incredible season this year. And Ewan, where would you put Remco Evenepoel? Of course, starting the Giro seemed like a absolutely crazy move by Deceuninck Quickstep. We both said that at the time as well. Where do you think his season has been since then?
I mean, in terms of journalistic intrigue, it's been superstar. But in terms of his UCI World Tour results, it's been average. He's taken a lot of big wins in terms of his home country and so forth. Silver medal at the European Championships, as well as a bronze at the Worlds. Yes, that's good. But Remco didn't take a World Tour win this year, so I would say satisfied.
I think that's very fair. Of course, we are putting them against their own standards as well, not just the results that they have. But anyways, next we get the second half of the Yates brothers. Simon Yates, who managed to finish on the podium of the Giro d'Italia this year. And Ewan, do you think that podium finish for the former Vuelta a España champion has left him more than satisfied?
Well, his team were very confident about his chances, but I think Simon Yates really took some time to grow into that race. And I would say this is satisfied. For a man who's won a Grand Tour in the past, been up there in one-day classics and so forth, it's quite underwhelming to see him only finish third at a Giro d'Italia and not really featuring too many other World Tour stage races. So Simon Yates, I think, belongs in satisfied.
And Rigoberto ran for EF Education and hasn't really been up there. Managed to finish inside the top 10 in the Tour de France after a horrific collapse almost of form during the race. So where would you put this absolute superstar for Colombia? He was 8th in both the road race and the Olympic time trial as well. So where would you put Rigoberto Urán?
Satisfied. He won a World Tour stage at least at the Tour de Suisse and finished on the final podium. He was very close to finishing in the top 5 of the Tour de France for a while, but that fell through. And yeah, he was there.
So anyways, to conclude our list, where do you want to put the man who broke the hearts of not only Belgium, but also Denmark, crushing Wout van Aert's hope, and also the Danish Team Pursuit squad for gold on both occasions? Where do you think Filippo Ganna should be on our list?
Well, judging by his fantastic 2020 season, this is almost a replica, but it includes the Olympic gold medal. On the track, however, not on the road. He won 2 time trials at the Giro, as well as being in pink for a number of days, alongside the World Championships jersey. He was defeated a number of times across the board by Remy Cavagna and also by Wout van Aert. But I would say this is what we would have expected maybe from Pipo. It seems crazy to say that. I love Pipo Ganna, but I would say this is satisfied.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. So anyways, that's it for our list of the rankings of the 2021 riders. Thank you for staying with us. That was a lot of riders. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to make sure to stay up to date with all the crazy things we're doing on the channel. And of course, thank you very much for watching and have a nice day.